Who is your daddy? I am your father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things here.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?
Well, welcome to episode 122 of Fathers of the Grind. My name's Tim Nestor, and rejoining me now via satellite in an undisclosed location, Derek Teague. Welcome back.
Hey, how you doing?
So Derek is recording this on his cell phone from his bunker. He played a lot of Far Cry 5 recently, and he became a prepper. And
exactly.
So now he is
got
down
a
in this
secret stash and everything.
Yeah. Speaking of Far Cry 5, I think we both finished that game in the last week or so. Overall thoughts on it?
It's my game of the year so far. I mean, that's not a long list because I'd only put that game and Monster Hunter. If you and I ever finish A Way Out, which isn't your fault, I keep forgetting to play. That might make the list too, but definitely Far Cry 5 is still my favorite experience so far this year. I actually want to keep playing it. The co-op partner I was playing with, we mainly played in my game, so I want to join theirs now. So I plan on continuing to play that game.
And without spoiling the ending, of course, thumbs up or thumbs down for how they chose to end this game. If you do the full ending, I know there's at least two other spots where you could end it differently, but if you take the game all the way to the full conclusion, overall thumbs up or thumbs down on how Ubisoft decided to close this one out.
I thought it was genius. And again, without spoiling it, I'll explain why I thought it was genius. Because it was the one ending that nobody would have predicted. That's just not how video games end. And I can't.
That's not how this one was heading either. This one was not heading for that.
And I can't say why, because if I say why, it literally spoils it. But I can say that what they did, as I sat there and I watched it, I was like, oh my gosh, they just did something that no other game really ever does. And so I thought that was really unique.
It was really up. It was up there with some of the more jaw-dropping moments that I've had in a video game campaign, at least.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people didn't like it how it ended, because I think they want their typical, this is how it always plays out ending, and the Ubisoft clearly went, this is what everybody thinks is going to happen. We're going to do the opposite.
Yep, it was really, really good. I'm actually, right now I'm trying to sell it. I've got it up on Facebook Marketplace, actually. I'm trying to sell it to get full price for it, because everyone else is selling it for the 50 range or so around here. So if I can get close to 50, maybe 45 for it, I'm going to sell it, spend it on other stuff. But this is the kind of game that when it's on some sort of deep digital sale, I will totally double dip and grab this one again and do a bunch of the side stuff. Some of the DLC looks entertaining when that comes out. So I really, really like Far Cry 5 a lot. It's really good. So yeah, there you go. I finished that. You finished that one. I also finished a run through of Horizon Zero Dawn: The Frozen Wilds DLC.
Okay.
So I jumped back into that last week, and I was telling this to Daniel last week, your alter ego, and I weirdly enough, I'd kind of forgotten how much I love Horizon. That game is so good. I mean, it is a really good game.
Said that like a Valley girl. That game is so good.
As
if
I can't even with you right now. So yeah, I mean, seriously, that game, I forgot how good it was. I really did. And so as I'm playing through the Frozen Wilds, it's absolutely gorgeous. The new area they open up is great. Some of the new enemies that you have to face are super tough. They do their own version of taking down outposts, kind of. They did that before with corruption zones and with some bandit camps and things like that. So you've got some of that too. And I thought the story was quite good. It had another kind of a 1.5 feel to it. It didn't feel like a full sequel, obviously, because it's not. But it did have a major storyline that ran through it. And I thought it was very good. I liked the way it ended. I actually kind of wanted to keep playing it. But, of course, the main game we're going to talk about this week then came out pretty much as soon as I finished it. So,
okay.
So it was time to wrap up that. So Horizon, amazing game, one of the best games of last year, and the DLC is highly worth your time if you enjoyed the main game. There you go.
Yeah.
You been playing anything else you want to tell us about before we get to the star of the show?
No, Far Cry 5. I literally beat that game when God of War came out.
There you go. And now that's what we're going to talk about is God of War. But before we do that, just want to let you Switch owners out there know that Dark Souls Remastered has been delayed for the Switch only, because I've heard they're going to make it in 4K 60 frames on Switch as well. That's what
I
I heard.
am not bummed by that at all because I was just going to go PC anyway.
Yeah, I know you are.
I also want to give a shout out to Daniel Freitas just because as I was listening to the show, and I didn't finish it yet. I still need to finish last week's show. But as I started listening to it, there was several times that he would say something and I would like say, that's what she said or something like that. And he would then say it right after me. And I was like, oh my God, we're like freaking twins. This guy's the worst. I hate him. It's like a poor version of me. So
yeah, he's the New England version of you.
I'd say a poor trailer trash version of me.
I don't know. You're the one from Florida. That's a tough one. That's a tough call.
I like the fact that if anybody, I know we only have like 2 people that watch on YouTube, but I love the up the nose view they're getting right now.
Yeah, great. I'm only gonna do audio only for this because that
yes, please do, because I'm like trying to fix this camera and it keeps pushing back up under my nose.
Well, for 2 reasons. One, it's unfair to people to have to see that, and number 2, I don't want them to figure out your undisclosed location. I don't want them to see.
True, I am in a bunker, so
yeah,
I don't want them to know.
See where you are.
And we literally get like 5 views, so I don't care on YouTube.
And at least one of those is last week's guest co-host, Daniel Freitas. He's a YouTube listener. That's how he listens. During work, I think. Horrible.
That's because he likes to look at my face.
Well, this week all he can see. This week all he's going to see is the logo. Sorry, Daniel.
Yeah, DFC.
Yep.
See my face.
I'm sure there was other pieces of news this week. If you're interested, go look for Corey Barlog's YouTube video. He basically posted a live video, and I'm pretty sure it's legit, of him opening up the review score average for the first time for God of War. This is a game that they've been working on for, I think, just under 5 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he's obviously very emotional. This has been his life for the last several years. And so he opens it up and sees that right when he opens it, it's at a 93 average. And while he was on the video, it jumped up to 94 as the reviews rolled in. And of course, now we know it's sitting at a 95 Metacritic average. Currently the highest rated game, at least with a consensus rating, in 2018 for any platform.
Yeah, he started weeping, which I don't think he was acting. I think that was real. He even had a part where he cut away. He's like, I've been delaying, and then you see it cut, and then it goes to him clicking. So he definitely was nervous, and then when he saw the score, it was relief and joy all at the same time. So he started crying.
And as I've seen a lot of people on social media point out, it's just really cool to see the human face behind something that we experience in what feels like its own vacuum. Sometimes we forget that there are a lot of humans with thoughts and feelings and opinions and creativity behind all these games. And it's just cool to see the guy who directed it all, who really put his heart and soul into it, seeing the effects of all his work. And I got to tell you, they created something really special. They created something really special.
I was going to say, it's one thing if it's an indie game. This is a AAA game. And the biggest thing you get with critiques from AAA games is you get a lot of bashing because it's ran by businesses and corporations, and so they have these structures for all their video games. And I would say God of War so far does follow one of those structures, but you can tell he's sincerely put everything he could into this game, even though it's for a big corporation and a big company and all that stuff. It's still his art, it's still his direction, it's something he still feels sincere about. So I thought that was pretty cool to see that, because you usually only get to see that with indie game developers, A Way Out. You get to see Crazy Guy, stuff like that. But this is a big studio, big release coming out to Sony platform. It's their game, and yet you get to see, like you said, the human side. You get to see somebody who's not a robot for a corporation going, I will design it the way you want.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
he was directing it, and I think he had a good amount of say on how this thing went.
And I am sure that Sony wanted this game to come out last year. You know, I'm sure they wanted this to be their big fall exclusive. But you can tell this team and Corey, the director, and his whole team, they were given the freedom to say, when it's finished, release it. Because as we'll get into, this game is airtight. It is totally complete. It is absolutely a finished, high quality product. So we'll get into all of that. Before we get into that, one of the things that's been going around, and I'm actually one person who has said this, and right now I'm standing by it. Just to give you guys a little preview of what I think about this game as we start talking about it, I think this might be one of the best games ever made. I'm not saying it's going to be my personal favorite when it's all said and done, because it'll take several years for it to build that kind of nostalgia for me. But if I have to look at it just objectively, as well as just the fun I'm having with it, it's one of the best games ever made. And that's just how I feel right now. That might change. I know I'm actually not that far in the story, I just learned. Even though I've put about 20 hours into this thing, I've done a ton of side quests. It's pretty much been all I've been doing this weekend. We've had some sick kids, so we've been sidelined a lot this weekend, and the weather's been kind of junky until today. And so anyway, I've been able to spend a lot of time playing it, and holy cow, I think it might be one of the best games ever. And that's kind of the discussion going around right now, are we allowed to say that about a non-Zelda, non-Mario game? You know, are we allowed to say that this quickly? Or non-Grand Theft Auto, you know?
Oh, yeah. No.
It is surprising to me how
I mean,
high,
it's
highly I
no
regard it.
no Sea of Thieves. I wanted it to at least be at that level, and it's not there for me.
By the way, you'll appreciate this. As I went to just double check to make sure it was still at a 95 Metacritic, I saw that Sea of Thieves was right beside it, and it's right now on the Xbox. It's sitting at a 69 based on 69 reviewers. I thought you'd appreciate
I do
that.
appreciate that. I do. I like it. What is it? Says nueve. Yeah, I learned that today.
Oh, look at you! You're so cultured now.
Yeah, trying to learn the minority language to say 69. That's great.
It's minority for now, so get ready.
Yeah, that's
all right.
true. They are taking over the world.
It's happening. All right. So before we get into the details of this game, we are just to let you guys know, I'm going to do the best I can to keep it spoiler free. For clarity's sake, I am not done with the main story of the game. So even if I wanted to tell you how it ended, I can't, because I don't know. I don't think, Derek, you finished it yet either.
I'm probably 6 hours in.
Okay. All right. So basically what we're doing is we're just giving you our first impressions of it. We'll talk about what it looks like, the visuals, the combat. We'll talk about I really want to pause on the father-son relationship that they've built in this game, which is very unique. And of course, just our general thoughts on other things that we see in the game.
All right, before we jump into this, and I when I say brief, let's just make it brief. What are your thoughts on the God of War franchise in general before this game?
Yeah. Okay. So if I had to take it to a really high level, let's say I was at a meeting and they gave me like a couple sentences to sum it up, I would say it is fast-paced, bloody action, not very deep in character development, but summer blockbuster style video game.
And you like them?
I enjoyed them a lot, yes.
Okay.
To be fair, one of them, I need to go back and pull up my list here. Let me do that while you give your thoughts on it. But it's on my favorites of all time list as a series.
Yeah.
And I picked the original one, but I gotta tell you, like I've just been talking, I think this one is gonna now represent that series on my top 25 list. I just don't know where. I have to wait till I'm finished with it.
Yeah.
I think it was right around like the 16 or 17 range, so really high for me personally, all time. I love this series.
Okay, that's what I was trying to find out. See, the two that came out on the PS2 are two of my favorite PS2 games.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved them.
Which were God of War 1 and 2, in case people don't know.
Yeah, and then I didn't really care about the PSP games, and then...
But they were good. Did you play them? Ghost of Sparta and Chains of Olympus?
I think I played a little bit of one of them, and I just didn't care.
They were really good. They needed the better analog sticks, but I can confirm because I played them both. That's back when I did GameFly, and they were both really good, really high quality PSP games.
Yeah, and then God of War 3 came out when Final Fantasy 13 came out. Final Fantasy 13 ended up winning my heart as far as my time too. So
Oh
I
my
actually put
gosh.
more time into Final Fantasy 13. I did go back and beat God of War 3, but I will say I was kind of burnt out of the God of War games by the time I got through 3. And then I played probably half of Ascension. I never bothered to finish that one. So my love for God of War started to die, is kind of what the point I was going to make, is I absolutely adored the first two, and then 3 and Ascension kind of like mellowed it out.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I'm a fanboy, but I definitely would say I love the franchise. I'm a huge fan of David Jaffe. Well, I hate him personally because he's just annoying, but I'm a huge fan of his games. So I loved them back then. But going into this God of War, I wouldn't say I was super hyped. I thought it looked good, but because of 3 and Ascension, even though I knew they were going to be different, all that stuff, I just kind of lost that love for the franchise, that I couldn't say that I was super hyped for this one.
Yeah. I mean, so I played 1 and 2, obviously, shortly after they both released. And then I never had a PS3, as I've said many times, so I did not play 3 or Ascension. I did eventually get a PSP and play the other 2. And then I did eventually, because you bought Remastered on the PS4, I played through 3 on the PS4, which is a great game, really fun action game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the best representation, God of War 3, of the first run of this franchise. What we're looking at now with God of War is essentially a complete reworking of what this franchise
It's a
is.
reboot.
Completely. And we'll get into, especially with the combat, but also the tone and the character. And they've decided to take all the things that I love about stuff like The Witcher and Horizon and plug it into a God of War game. And we'll talk in a little bit about does it match up with what you know God of War as. But what so far has been your absolute favorite God of War game before now?
It's either 1 or 2. I just can't remember which one I liked more. I'll just say 1, just because it was the first one, and I was probably really hyped for it.
Yeah, for me it was definitely 1 too, just because it stuck with me the most. I played through it a couple of times just because it was so unique and so brutal but entertaining and all those things. And so I love 2, liked the other ones, liked 3 a lot. I think 3 might be objectively the best of those older ones. It's just 1 stuck with me the most. So the first question I have to ask, in your first several hours with this game, does this feel like a God of War game?
It does not. I mean, it's clearly him, but it's not him. And it's not the same character at all. Like, you can tell by the voice actor, it's Kratos. But I mean, when you're playing him, you're like, is that really Kratos? I mean, they completely changed him. And he really only says a few things. Instead of like yelling all the time and talking about killing everything, he's now just like, you're not ready, boy. You know, that's all he says. Boy, shut up. And so I actually like him more now, just because I relate to him a lot as a father, and that's how I father. Like, Eli, stop talking. Boy, you're not ready. Just stop talking. Yeah. But that would be the big thing for me is, you know, outside of combat, all that stuff, it just does not feel like God of War at all. Like, it just feels like they could have totally made this a new IP. And it's kind of strange that they went with God of War, to be honest with you. For me, it is.
Yeah. I do wonder if it began as we're making the next God of War game, and as the thing morphed, they had to stick with the IP because of what they built around it, but the game just became, at its core, something totally different. Even though it still is around the same character, there's a few references here and there that he's got a past that he doesn't want his son to know about. As he encounters other characters in the game, especially those who are gods or demigods or whatever they are, they recognize immediately that he is a god from a different realm. They're constantly challenging him. Why aren't you telling your son about this? So I think it works. I'm with you that it doesn't feel like the same thing at all, but it does work. And I don't know if I wanted a God of War 4 to play like God of War 3. I think I might have come out of that been like, yeah, it's more God of War. And it probably would have.
No, I think this was necessary. I
think
think
so
if
too.
they were going to make another God of War game, which clearly they decided to do, they had to make changes because I think
Yeah.
a lot of people. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I think a lot of people were getting in the category I was, and that's we love this franchise. Oh, we don't love it as much. You guys are killing it. I mean, think about it. They released 6 God of War games with all the same style combat, with like
Yeah.
subtle changes.
Right.
Same characters, same type of story.
New weapons, a few new powers, but mostly
Yeah.
the same.
Like
Yeah.
even IGN was doing like they did 7-minute explanation of God of War, like all the games, they explained the story. And if you go through that, because I went through it again, because even though I beat most of them, I didn't remember the story at all, and I was just like, wow, it's a good thing they rebooted this because it just went off
Yeah.
la la land. Like
Yeah.
it's just crazy.
Yep.
But yeah, I think if they were gonna do another God of War, which like I said, they clearly were, I think they had to reboot this, and I think obviously we're gonna get into details in a second, but I think the changes they made were not only necessary, but they were above what
Yeah.
my expectations were.
I would actually compare it to there's two franchises that come to mind, and actually both by Ubisoft, who I've admitted recently might be my favorite developer. But Assassin's Creed, of course, this past fall put out Origins, which is still Assassin's Creed. I would say more so than God of War. It maintains the vibe and feel of its predecessors, but boy, does it change a whole lot of stuff. The combat feels way different. The way you explore just feels totally different. Everything's improved in a lot of different ways, even though it still is Assassin's Creed. That reminded me of that, as well as if you think back to the early Far Cry days, when Far Cry 3 released, it was just a completely different game than Far Cry 1 and 2, which were
Yeah.
kind of mediocre games, first person shooter games. And then 3 all of a sudden had this open world, and now the Far Cry formula that we know it was established with 3 and kind of created something new, and we know what to
Yeah.
expect now. So I feel like they've done something totally new here with God of War.
The
And
only thing I would say though, and this is I said it earlier that they still are following a AAA formula, is Sony is not idiotic. They know what works. And I'm not just talking about Kratos having a son. Obviously that's pretty parallel to even Uncharted games, but mostly The Last of Us and stuff like that. But I think even if you look at the design of the game, like even the gameplay, the world, the coloring palette that they use, all this stuff falls in line with Uncharted, The Last of Us, Horizon Zero Dawn. Like they have like this structure, and they've obviously figured out gamers for right now.
Yep.
I'm sure it'll get old after a while, and they follow this. Like Days Gone's gonna follow it. They follow this system that they have, and then they obviously have variations on the system, and that's what they've done with God of War. They've followed a lot of what they've done with some of their successful franchises, and I think they rebooted it that way. And while it's great, and I do think it's good, I do still see some similarities to some stuff they've already released.
No, I agree with that. I actually think you can point to some similarities even from Uncharted. If nothing else, let's go ahead and talk about Kratos and his son Atreus, aka Boy. I think
Boy.
the dialogue
Boy.
in Uncharted games, the banter, and in this game, it's more of a father son. I mean, it feels pretty tense most of the time, but in a really good way. In that the son and dad clearly don't have a close relationship. This is not really a spoiler. At the beginning of the game, family member dies, and so the two of them are dealing with it, and that really kind of sets them off on this adventure. And so, them communicating to each other clearly is something they have not done a lot of before. The kid kind of knows about Kratos. He
They
interacts
really
with him
nailed the
some,
whole father-son thing, though.
they
I
really
mean,
did, and the kid's scared of him, but also kind of annoyed and wishes that he wasn't stuck alone with this guy now.
well, it's
But is scared of
Sasan
him at the same time.
yeah, Sasan keeps joking about like how how amazing he is, and because basically it's him and his son. Well, it's me and my son. I mean, I cannot tell you how often Eli talks and just asks question after question after question. So I'm listening to Atreus and I'm like, boy, shut up. And that's what Kratos says the whole time. He's just like, that's enough, boy, or let's go. That's not important, boy. And
Yep.
the entire time Atreus is just being a kid. He's just being a boy. He's just asking questions because he's confused.
Yep.
He doesn't understand. He wants all this knowledge. And then sometimes he runs off and gets himself in trouble just because guess what? He's a kid.
Yep.
So they really nailed the authenticity of what most boys are like.
Yeah.
And while not every father is like Kratos, I know there's a lot of us that have that type of personality where it's just like you can tell there's love for the son. Like you can look at Kratos and there's some scenes, and I'm not real deep into the game, but there's some scenes where he looks at Atreus and you can tell he loves him.
Yep.
But he's
there's
annoyed
even a
with
couple
him.
scenes where Atreus has his back or side to him, and Kratos starts to reach his hand to put his hand on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of like curls up his hands into a fist and puts it back down. So like he thinks about it, but then he's like, I don't want this boy to be. He kind of, in my mind, I don't know, maybe I'm misinterpreting this. I feel like he's thinking, I'm not going to make him soft. Like that's kind of the thought that I feel like Kratos is having is he wants to show affection to this kid that he loves. This kid is the last remaining thing in the world right now that he cares for. But he doesn't want, he wants the kid to learn the realities of life, which begins right away, of course, when they go deer hunting and then they finally kill the deer, but the deer's land, they're not quite dead. So he has the boy finish it off with his knife right to the throat or into the heart, whatever it is. And it was those kind of moments, which were already shared in the E3 trailer. So it's nothing brand new. It's very early in the game when you see that. It establishes really early on that, yes, Kratos kind of an a-hole. Let's be honest. He's never been a nice guy. Yeah. But the way that he shows love is to protect someone, but then to essentially arm them for the harsh realities of the world. And he's getting this kid ready to survive in this horrible world. I have no idea how the game will end, but for right now, the journey is him constantly telling the kid you're not ready, or as battles continue and you finish an area and it gives you your XP that you've earned for that battle, the kid will say, is that better? And he'll say, I see improvement, but that's all he'll give him, And so those kind of conversations happen a lot. And actually
one time he asked if he did better and he was like, no, you didn't. You did poorly or something. I was like, oh, I love it.
But some of my favorite scenes so far, and there have been some great cut scenes, some really cool story moments, but one of my favorite things so far has been when you get into these little rowboats, and there's this one area where you first feel that this game has a little bit more of an openness to it. I wouldn't call it open world, but kind of quasi open world. And you can go explore this vast area, and there's lots of secret areas to unlock, and you can go do side missions and upgrade your gear, which, by the way, I've been completely lost in doing all weekend. That's all I've been doing. I'm only I won't say how far I'm into the game, into the main story, because it's hard to do that without giving away too much. But I did. How do I want to say this without spoiling too much? I have a talking head attached to my belt. That's the part that I'm at right now. I'll just say that. And so that's how far I am into the story, which I don't think is super far. But I have done all these side missions that are everything from completing unfinished business for these spirits who are still upset and can't leave the world yet, to going in and finding this storeroom of treasure for one of the guys who does blacksmithing for you. Or I discovered this island. No explanation was given. It was just a whole bunch of the undead type enemy things, and they had this giant dragon chained to a mountain, and it couldn't get away and was trying to attack everyone, including me. And then this whole thing became essentially this giant, almost Legend of Zelda style dungeon where I had to go around, solve puzzles to navigate the island and find these 3 main things to unlock it, and then a 4th thing to really release it. That was so epic, and it was completely optional on the side. And so I have found this game has a ton of stuff like that I wasn't expecting, because the reason for me it doesn't feel like a God of War game for the most part is that the main gameplay meat is not what I expect from a God of War game, where you're going from area to area. Clear this area, pull this little lever, and then move on to the next area. And sometimes they would have some interesting puzzles, but for the most part, God of War has always just been about kill everything and move on, kill everything and move on. And this has introduced a whole new element of exploration. And as you're using this little rowboat to go from location to location, the son, Atreus, will be like, do you have any stories to pass the time? And Kratos, won't try to repeat any of the stories, but he is a really bad storyteller, and it's really funny. Like, it's legitimately funny because he'll tell the story and then he'll just end it, and the kid's like, "You haven't told a lot of stories, have you?" So it's just really great. So those things have been really entertaining, listening to them talk, and then of course every once in a while, the kid will express that he misses this other family member who's now gone, and so you can tell it's weighing on Kratos the whole time that this kid doesn't really want to be with me. And it's okay. I don't need him to show affection for me. I just need him to survive. It's all about survival with this guy.
Yeah.
So I love the dynamic between father and son, and it is completely helped out by gorgeous visuals. I think this game is absolutely stunning to look at. But you've got
It's not native 4K, so I don't like it.
oh, come on.
I counted all the pixels. It's terrible.
Derek's only
That's
6
why I'm
hours
only-
into the game,
that's
and
why
4
I'm only
hours have
6
been
hours
spent.
in.
4 hours have been spent up at the screen counting lines. Counting
Exactly. I'm
pixels.
only 6 hours into the game, but I've actually been playing it for 20, and I was for 14 hours just counting. And I was like, I can confirm this is not native 4K.
That is sad, but I would believe it.
Yeah.
I think this game looks really good. I think, for example, other games have done water better. Other games
Yeah.
have done other little elements here and there better, but overall,
Sea of Thieves.
Sea of
does something better
Thieves.
than
Don't
God
you
of
rate
War.
that as 69, you dirty sons of... Yeah, so, yeah, Sea of Thieves does better water. Even like not Horizon, Hellblade from last year had pretty amazing looking water as you're rowing at the beginning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, there are elements that aren't the best that I've ever seen, but as an overall package from start to finish, everything from the lighting to the way the forest looks with how big it is, and my goodness, the giant creatures. I have now run into several like planet-sized creatures, some good, some not so good, and
Yeah.
it is impressive. I mean, it is truly impressive what they've done visually with this. So I think it looks great. I think it's got a great new style, and I definitely feel like it fits with the Nordic setting. So for those of you who aren't aware, this game was taking place in Sparta, in Greece, over in that area of the world, and now everything has completely shifted up to the Nordic region. So now you've got the Norse mythology at play here. So as they refer to it, a different realm. So they still acknowledge that there's these mythological gods that exist in multiple realms throughout the world, and now he is in a new realm where he was in Greece for all the previous games. Now he's in the Nordic area. So anyway, I think the visuals match up with that well, and I know there's some areas you haven't gotten to yet, but some of it is really eye-popping stuff. So it's good. It's really good.
I would agree. I like the visuals. And I think they keep. I mean, every time Sony releases a new game like this, that's theirs, exclusive to them. I feel like they just step up the visuals every time, which is crazy. Like when I played Uncharted Lost Legacy and even Horizon Zero Dawn, I don't know if I would say I like God of War more than Horizon Zero Dawn, but I can't say it's uglier or anything. I think they're probably on par. I just think I liked Horizon's world maybe a little bit more. So
well, and just wait till you unlock certain areas as you progress, because I think it actually is pretty close, and in my opinion now exceeds it. But yes, a good comparison is Horizon, where you've got just these striking visuals everywhere you go. Every new area is like, holy crap, how do they do this? So they do that a number of times. But let's talk about one of the more interesting shifts for the franchise, and that is the combat. Tell me what you think about the combat system they've built for this game, because it's clearly been built from the ground up. Nothing that I experienced in previous God of War games really is here, save for maybe one or two things.
Yeah, I mean, it's got very few similarities to the original God of War games, but I will say that I would say this is a very unique system, but it also does borrow from Dark Souls. I'm seeing this a lot now. Assassin's Creed did it, and when I first started playing God of War on Friday, I was like, oh, especially when you first start the game, you have the lock-in system, you got the dodge, you've got your shield, and the way the system was set up at first when I started playing, I was like, and I think R1 is your quick attack, R2 is your heavy, and I'm like, that's Dark Souls right there. And then they have a parry system built in. I was like, that's Dark Souls. But as you progress through, and this is to me the difference, is even though in Dark Souls you level up your character, you even change weapons, all that stuff, you never unlock like new abilities. Like you don't unlock the ability to do a different type of attack or whatever. If you have like a sword, you have your same sword attacks. You just get stronger,
Okay.
and better defense. In God of War, Kratos is literally learning new attacks. He's getting more powerful, and there is just so much more. Plus, they rely more on the, especially in the beginning of the game, they were pushing me to throw my axe more in combat, and even some enemies rely on you to just throw the axe the entire time.
Yep. And
So-
I've used that a ton, by the way, even on major bosses. Sometimes it's the best way to just
Yeah,
nick a
you
little
gotta
bit of
keep
health
your
off.
space. Yeah.
Yep, because
So,
you're right.
and then-
It did remind me a little bit of my brief time with Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne, just in that you can die very easily in this game. It is much
Yeah,
tougher
it's
than
not
I remember
easy.
the other games being. It doesn't have the fast arcade style combos of the other games, of the previous God of War games. Instead, it's much more methodical while still being a fast-paced action game. So they do a good job, I think, of balancing some of that.
Yeah.
I totally picked up on the Dark Souls and Bloodborne comparison, especially with the buttons mapped the way that they are. That totally makes sense. But also just the heaviness and the power you feel as you're swinging the sword. You know,
Well,
except
and it even has like a little bit. I think it's clearly better because I don't even like Hellblade, but Hellblade's system where you rely on the girls or the voices in your head to tell you basically where the enemy is.
absolutely. Yep.
You rely on Atreus, plus they have like arrows behind you and to your side and stuff, letting you know, because the camera is fixed on you third person, but it's real close. So it's easy to not be able to see other enemies. They never pull the camera back to go, okay, there's 5 enemies in this little area or in this big area, so you need to see everything. The game goes, no, you're gonna stay pretty close to Kratos, and then you gotta rely on Atreus talks to you, talks to you, and also probably the thing you rely on the most is your arrows. And then there's like a color system, you know. If it's red, then there's something coming at you right now, you know, that type of thing. So I think the system, like I said, it borrows from Dark Souls, but it goes beyond it, and then you realize it's definitely different. But if you've played a lot of Dark Souls and Bloodborne, when you first start playing the game, you'll definitely feel the similarities. So they are borrowing it from
more
it.
approachable than those two, though. Just to be clear for anyone.
Definitely, it's not as hard.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I was thinking about it, and I'm gonna deviate a little bit, but I think it's important when you have a story-driven game like this that they don't make it ridiculously hard like a Dark Souls. Like, I know there was some people that were complaining like Dark Souls and Bloodborne and all of them don't have stories. Well, they do have stories, but I'm actually really glad those games are not heavily story-driven with tons of like cutscenes and all this BS. And that's because when I play those games, I'm playing them to beat the bosses, to explore the worlds, to unlock the mysteries, all that. And so if I die a lot, that's fine. But when I play a story-driven game like God of War, and I am trying to take my time, but I'm just speaking for me personally. When I'm playing a game and I want to know how it ends, I don't want to die 5 billion times. I get frustrated by that. And I'm like, no, I just want to see how the story ends.
Yep.
And so I'm glad the Dark Souls and Bloodborne games are not heavy on that, because that's not the point. God of War is different. While they are borrowing a little bit, they clearly make this game harder than maybe your normal third-person action game. But I would say it's up there with like Horizon Zero Dawn. There was parts of Horizon Zero Dawn that was really difficult. Like you had to use your brain. You had to use your traps. You couldn't just go in and start swinging your melee weapon. Same thing with this. You can't just go in flying through, swinging your axe and going, oh, I'll just beat everything by button mashing. You have to think. You have to like move around a lot. And like I said, as you unlock more experience, you unlock more abilities. when you unlock more abilities, you start to see the game, to me, really open up. And
Yep.
I'm not even that far, so.
And so, speaking of the axe, what do you think about his weapon of choice now? Of course, in the previous God of War games, you had the two blades with the chains on them, right? And they usually were on fire and stuff. You could swing them around real fast. And then he
I
unlocked.
think those are more fun to use, but I do like the fact that the axe can be thrown and then
Yeah.
called back to you. And they even use it in a unique way, like for a puzzle. This isn't a spoiler, but I just solved a puzzle where I'm like looking at it, and clearly there's a chest in this room, right? And I can't get to the room. And in the front, I want to try to explain this. In order to unlock the door to get to the chest, I have to break these, like, they're kind of like lights, but they're like attached to like these gel type things, and you have to kill both of them at the same time.
Yep.
To unlock the room to get to the chest. Well, you can't get to one of them. Like, you can't get to it because it's against like the door, and you can't throw your axe through the door. And then there's a side view that you can't even see that one. And I'm like staring at it, I'm like, how am I supposed to get both of these? And then I was like, oh, what if I throw the axe right above the second one that I can see from the side? And then what if I walk to the front? And I didn't use a guide. I did this all on my own. Walk to the front, to the cage area where I can see both of them, and I call my axe back. It'll probably go through both of them. And sure enough, it did. And
Yep.
it unlocked it. And I was like, oh, that's really cool how they use the calling my axe back to unlock a puzzle,
Yep.
to unlock this chest.
It does have a Thor feeling to it when you think of the Marvel
Yeah.
movies, and the way he just holds his hand out, and then there's this glow of light as the thing comes flying back to him, and he catches it with this very satisfying kind of thud as he catches it every time. So they did a good job, I think, making the axe feel like the new special Kratos weapon. So I don't know if the game unlocks additional weapons for Kratos. I feel like it might, but
I
I'm
think
pretty
you
sure.
just keep powering up his.
I just want to use the axe. Yeah, I've powered it up probably way too much for where I am in the game. Like I said, I've done a lot of side stuff, but I'm with you. The way you can throw and recall the axe, and you use that in a variety of puzzle solving ways is awesome. They do have a lot of collectible style stuff in the world. So every area you go to has a different set of artifacts you can find. They're usually out of your way. You have to explore a bit, break a box or two, find a dead body up in the corner that has the artifact laying beside it. There's always a little out of your way places you can go to find these, and you just sell those for a whole bunch of money, which they call hack silver.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you can sell those for a whole bunch of money. By the way, use the hack silver to craft new armor for yourself or for Atreus. You can craft wrist armor, chest armor, a belt, and then of course you can improve your pommel on your axe, like the handle. Because the axe stays the same, but you can just improve the handle, which on all those things have an effect on your stats. I want to go ahead and see what you think about the RPG elements you've seen in this game so far. I have found the upgrade system, but you talked about the skills earlier. There's so many skills to learn, not overwhelming amounts. The skill trees aren't massive, but both for you and for Atreus, you can learn stuff with your axe as well as just with your shield. Because by the way, you can throw your axe and then leave it, and then just go battle with your fist and your shield. And there's a ton of damage you can do. You actually stun them far more quickly. And if you stun them, they have a little stun meter, then you can do a finishing move on them. And all that stuff, again, very satisfying. And you can upgrade any tree line you want. I want to focus on axe. I want to focus on throwing the axe, or I want to focus on bare hand and shield attacks. And they get pretty nuanced and pretty interesting. And of course, there's lots of ways to upgrade and upgrade your gear using resources you find. And then they give you enchantments as well, essentially these little slots where you can add a little bonus, a little boost of some kind to whatever gear has a component slot there. So they give you, I think, I'd put it on par with what Horizon allows you to do with its RPG elements. And I think that's just enough. I don't necessarily need more than that. I would have been okay with it, but I think they have taken the previous God of War formula, which is collect a ton of red orbs and just pour them into this thing to improve it. Now it's pretty in depth. Again, it feels a lot more like Horizon or the new Assassin's Creed RPG stuff that they added.
Yeah, I like the again, this is part of what makes it not feel like a God of War game to me. But and I'm not saying they didn't have an upgrade system in God of War. They did. I just feel like I don't know. I feel like I'm playing just an action RPG, like a Mass Effect, or even as I was playing this, I was like, maybe this would be like what Jade Empire would be if they made Jade Empire 2. Like I just has this like vibe where it's like completely an RPG game, an action RPG game, which is not how I felt the previous God of War games
At
were. I
all.
felt
Yeah,
like,
not even
yeah,
close.
I just didn't feel like they were like that. I
Yep.
mean, the fact that you can upgrade your defense, your offense, and you can
Yep.
unlock special skills.
Yep.
You have all these side quests, all these side things you can do. The areas are a little more open, like you said, they're not open world, but they are open, so they encourage you to go loot. So I'm constantly trying to unlock treasures and loot things, which is what I've been enjoying. I'm not very far into the game, um, because I've been focusing more on, I don't know, just exploring.
Counting the pixels.
Yeah, counting the pixels, definitely. Sorry, my phone's dying, so now I lost my video feed.
Oh, that's all right. You need to start. You need to plug it in.
Yeah, I'm gonna move rooms.
All right, go
Hopefully I
ahead.
don't lose you.
Okay. All right, I'll plug it in, or you go ahead and plug it in real quick. I was gonna say that I'll plug it in since I'm right in the same room with you, but
Yeah. Yeah, totally do that for me, please.
I am with you 100%. I am really digging the combat. I don't. There's a lot of games where I kind of roll my eyes when another battle kicks in, but I have a blast with this combat. Throwing the axe feels great. Hitting the combos feels awesome. You mentioned the special attacks. They have these runic attacks that you can unlock. You can essentially find them in treasure chests throughout the world. And what they are is there's a light runic attack and a heavy runic attack. And as you're holding your shield, activating one or the other, well, then, of course, it has to cool down, and you can improve the cooldown time. But then it will activate whatever that power was. It could be some sort of special axe throw or ice blast or ground slam, all kinds of different things that these attacks can be. And then there's also this specialized talisman attack, and it could be a passive thing where, hey, if you time your dodge perfectly, everyone slows down for a few seconds, and you can upgrade that. Or, hey, if you parry perfectly, then you get some sort of boost. Or maybe it's an active one where you can stun all enemies in front of you, or you can get a health boost. So they have all these additional little special attacks you can do, which add layers to the game that really kind of get you out of a bind. Because I found in the side quest there are these. You talked about the difficulty not being overwhelming, and I'm with you that it is very welcoming that the difficulty is not overwhelming, because when you want to just go through the story, I don't feel like there's too many spots where you just flat out get stuck. There's a few spots where you'll die and have to reload, but it's not super often, and even then you'll get through it the next time most likely. But the side stuff, there's what are these called? What are called these realm tears? There's little floating purple blobs in the air, and you reach your hand in there to grab the item, and more often than not, your hand gets thrown back out, and these enemies pop out, and they're always super tough. So enemies' health bars give you an idea of how tough they are. Green means super easy, yellow's a little bit tougher, orange is really tough, and purple is just, you better watch out. They'll kill you in 1 or 2 hits. And so more often than not, they're dark orange, if not purple enemies that jump out, and you have to defeat them. If you defeat them, then you get some sort of legendary item, whether it's an enchantment or a new runic attack. So they really give you good reason, in my opinion, to explore these side islands, and they're all secret areas or just optional areas for the most part. And you can unlock some really powerful stuff. But that stuff is hard. That's where I've died, 5, 6, 7 times trying to get the right balance of battling these enemies that are just so tough to take down. So it can get tough, but like you just said, that's only when you do the optional side stuff. I mean, Horizon and Witcher 3, they all had these difficult side areas where if you choose to go after the bonus stuff, it's going to be tough. But the main story
Well,
is
I would say even the main campaign for some of those games could be difficult if you weren't leveling up at a good pace, especially The Witcher. Like, you had to pay attention to stuff.
That's very
I
true.
actually have a good friend who just bought The Witcher 3, and he's not the most patient guy, and he was like texting me, and he was just like, this game's trash, the movement's terrible, it's just a hack and slash, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, well, I should have known you wouldn't like it, because he's just, kind of, that's just how he is. And then like 2 hours later, he's like, oh, I died to this wraith, and I was getting mad because I was like, it's just a hack and slash. And then I realized you could research her, and you could do all this other stuff. He's like, no, I like it. I'm like, yeah, now you're seeing the beauty of the game.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how it is with God of War. You got to figure it out. Same thing with Horizon. There's certain things that can be difficult, but once you like study your enemies, check the Mysteria or whatever it's called, and you start figuring them out, what their weaknesses are, and change your tactics, it can get a little bit easier. But I have died a few times. I haven't died a lot, but again, I'm not that far in. So
well, every time you have an encounter, your son has a notebook, and he'll pull out the notebook and he'll take notes, and it'll say, new bestiary entry added. So that's when they add new encounters. And then of course, every time you fight him again, not every time, every once in a while when you encounter them again, based on how you do in the fight, he might add a tip, that bestiary. So you can open it up and look at it. It'll tell you, by the way, if you freeze them, then blah, blah, blah. So it'll give you a little tip on battling each enemy type. So it's cool. And again, it's all written from the kid's point of view. Even if you go in there and read it, whether it's read the lore stuff that he discovers or the bestiary stuff, it's all written from Atreus' perspective. And he'll say, if Father dodges at the last second, he'll be able to get in, the weak spot or whatever. So he writes it from his perspective, which is really cool. You're basically reading his journal like a good dad should.
I don't read that crap. I got time for that, boy.
So we've already covered story a little bit too. I think the story is interesting. I'll give you the final take on that when I do finish the game. But from what I've played so far, really intriguing story. It's a very simple mission that these two are on that now is becoming way more complicated, as you could have expected, I think, as you encounter other people. Speaking of other people, there are some really interesting characters in the game. It's mostly all about you, Kratos, and your son, Atreus, and their dynamic together. And, trying to survive together. Of course, that's what it's mostly about. But you meet a really interesting Witch of the Woods and these two blacksmith brothers who don't like each other, but you run into them separately all the time. They're very funny, very well acted, and very witty. Mm-hmm. Good writing for those guys. And there's a few other characters, too. Some of the enemy characters that you run into, which I won't mention by name, but a few of them in particular are fascinating. I want to know more about why are they coming after us. So it's... yeah. They're doing a good job with the story, but that's not really what I care about as much. It's really about the characters. They've done a really good job introducing interesting characters. And hey, if the story all of a sudden develops this really strong central plot line that goes beyond this task that the father and son are trying to complete, then that's awesome. That's great. But if it does,
I'm gonna guess that's what they're gonna do, because still, as a fan of this franchise, I'd like to understand why Kratos is there, how this all fits with how he became who he is now compared to what he was. Like, I want to know more about Kratos.
Yeah. Yep.
So
and I want to know more about
the
family member who dies right out of the gate at the beginning.
Yeah, I think
it's talked about a lot. I think there's some key pieces to that backstory as well that are going to help fill in the blanks a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to learning about that. And as far as the mission types, they're pretty straightforward. You can do your main missions, which are, again, what you expect from a large-scale action RPG. You open up your map, you see where you're supposed to go. You can't get past this area, so you have to go back and defeat some new boss or new area to get the item you need to go back and unlock that path. So, and I'm really oversimplifying it, but just to let you know, the mission types for the main missions aren't incredibly surprising, but they're all very good. It's the side missions where I think some things shine. Again, where you have to solve certain puzzles. You have to kind of go out of your way to find some stuff, whether it's, freeing a dragon or, solving these realm tears or helping these spirits, like I said before. There's some interesting side missions that you can do, but for the most part, it's what you expect. You get and they call them favors, by the way. So you unlock these favors that you then do for side characters. And then it gives you a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of experience points that you can then learn to upgrade or use to upgrade stuff using all those RPG elements. So if you can't tell, I am pretty enthralled with this game. I'm excited to see when it's all said and done, and I've decided to set it aside for the next thing, and I've had some time to think about it. I'm really interested to find out how it sits with me. Will it feel this almost perfect as a video game later, or am I just kind of enamored with it because it's new and it's a franchise that I already like a lot, that has taken it to new levels? It's hard to say so far, but I'm trying to look at it objectively, and I am having troubles finding flaws with this game. And I know that might sound like an overstatement. I know you really hate when people over dramatize stuff, but I'm honestly having trouble finding a lot of flaws with this game.
I'm not really finding many flaws, but I don't think I'm not praising it as much as everybody else. But I'm still open to seeing where this game takes me. Right now, I like it a lot, but I'm not in love with it. But again, I'm not that far in, maybe 5 or 6 hours in. And I think it's just kind of where I am right now, because every time I start playing it, I can't play it for more than 40 minutes. And then I'm like, I need to go do something else. You know, I just have to go do something else. I'm not completely engaged where I can just sit there and play it for 4 to 6 hours straight like I used to be able to do. And even Far Cry 5, there was several nights that I would play that game 4 to 6 hours. Like, I just really got into. So that hasn't happened for me yet with God of War, and I think that's what's kind of holding it back for me personally. But objectively, I've yet to find anything that I'm like, well, this is wrong with it. No, I think they did a really good job with this game.
Yeah, it is. It's something special. So far, Monster Hunter World has been my favorite game of the year, just barely ahead of Far Cry 5. That could change, I guess, that throughout the year. But for right now, that's how it feels. But from what I've played of God of War, this seems like it's going to easily surpass both of those. So I'm excited about it. It's interesting. The first half of the first 4 months of the year now have become a thing. It feels like every year there's a game in the first 4 or 5 months of that year that then takes over, and that's all I care about. So like Zelda and Horizon last year, Witcher 3, or no, Uncharted 4 the year before that, Witcher 3 the year before that. I feel like the beginning of these years have been pretty stellar. So I'm excited.
That's Sony's fault. They keep releasing some of their best games.
Yeah, blame Sony. Yeah.
Sony Pony.
Well, there you go. I'm curious to hear what all of you listeners think as well. Is this one of the best games ever? Have you finished it? I know a few of you in the group have already posted that you finished it and you love it. And a few of you are like me. You're taking your time and just, playing every side thing you can. And some of you more like Derek, where you just haven't had the time to really plow through and finish it. So what are you guys all thinking so far? Am I overstating it? And it's very possible. It's
Tim
Sunday night.
Tim, you're always overstating.
I could be overstating it. I mean, it's No Man's Sky, but it's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Gosh, nothing's No Man's Trash.
Yeah, it's No Man's Sky or Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, those are great games. Sea of Trash, No Man's Trash.
All right. Well, guys, Derek is currently shoving his face into his pillow while he tries to talk to us.
I know, I'm exhausted.
So we're going to let him go. We're going to let you guys go too, and enjoy God of War this week. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Who is your daddy? I am the father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things here.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?